Hi, my name is Deborah. Just real quick, how many people out here are anti-war and like kind of on the wave of the anti-war sentiment? Just raise your hand real quick. So pretty much I'm preaching to the choir when I tell my story. All right. I try not to harp on the epithets we seem to rally around so much. Sorry if I can't continue on at a certain interval with talking. It's pretty fresh what I've been through. So if I can't, my husband, who knows my story probably better than myself in some ways, will continue for me. I'm a Marine. It's a big difference from the Army. I think there's one other Marine out here, Andrew. So when we talk about the Marine Corps, if I use language that's different, it is because it is different. It is a different culture, a different lifestyle, different mentality. I would say that as far as the genre of warrior that the military produces, the Marines and soldiers are the same in what they do and the quality of what they do, but the Marines like to think that they're superior, which sets a very interesting baseline for the culture that I've come out of. This superior culture, intellectually, like they like to believe themselves superior culture, and the regimen that goes along with that, the training that goes along with that, the indoctrination, even maybe some would say the brainwashing that goes along with that. So I joined in 2008. My father was a Marine. When I joined, I knew exactly what I was getting into. I knew it was 3 months of intensive training. I knew that in no way were we going to be coddled. In fact, that the hazing would be very intense. And I looked forward to living up to the image that my father had set of a lean, green Marine, even into his 40s, once a Marine, always a Marine. So when I went in, I did not expect so quickly to become disillusioned by what I saw. The abusiveness of the drill instructors didn't surprise me so much as the doctrine that they instilled in us. And more importantly, the way the doctrine was took. By the end of my first cycle, we had lined up. And because a girl had crumpled her uniform in a flurry of drill and put it at the bottom of a bag, and because she was not the best recruit, we lined up and had her walk down as we kicked her brutally. I mean, our drill instructors at this point learned to leave the room. I mean, that's the kind of the practice. You leave the room, you exit, you don't hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, write no reports. So this kind of brutality just kind of was just very normal. You know, you're not allowed to hit. That's one of the first things they come out and tell you. You're not going to disrespect another recruit. You're not going to physically assault another recruit. But, you know, there's the lights off and the lights on mentality, what we do in public and what we do in private. And in private, we beat the crap out of her. I graduated with a sinking feeling that this was not the lifestyle I wanted, but I had signed the contract, and I was told by my drill instructor, you can make a difference, Deborah, you're intelligent. You can really make a difference. I since come to learn that that's kind of the spoon-fed lie that we're all fed. So I went, graduated from recruit training, went on and did PRASP recruiting, and then went into MCT and again witnessed more of that violence, but to a whole other degree. I mean, we're talking about girls beating each other up and boys beating each other up, and the instructors knowing full well about it and just being like, it's your Marines, deal with it. You know, this is kind of the environment. By the time I left MCT, the Marine Corps is different. We've got 3 months of basic training, then a few days of leave, and then another month of training where the two genders are integrated. We keep the genders separate during the initial basic boot camp. So then the last month, if you're a POG, a personal other than grunt, you're integrated into that last month. So really there's 4 months of training. So yeah, by the time I graduated my 4th month of training, I had suffered a heat stroke. I was emaciated to 98 pounds and just completely out of it. Like, I had seen my whole platoon basically beat each other up for nothing more than for falling asleep in class because, you know, with 2 hours of sleep a night, 4 hours of sleep a night, you're going to do such a thing. And for nothing more than a crumpled uniform, or just because you simply had aggression, you simply had to get it out somewhere. During that time, you know, we were watching videos of people getting blown up. These are impromptu videos, not videos that the Marine Corps condones. The Marine Corps administration, when we talk about the Marine Corps, there's 2 Marine Corps, the Marine Corps administration, and they are very, very upright. I mean, they are perfect, and they will tell you the perfect line. And then we're talking about the Marine Corps that I know as an enlisted person, and that the Marines know as people, and that's the Marine Corps that's behind the closed doors. That's I mean, maybe to get Godfather, the familia, the very small, you and I know what we're about. Nobody else does out in the real world, in the civilian world. So, you know, when I talk about Marine Corps proper, that's not the Marine Corps that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Marine Corps culture that's behind the Marine Corps proper. So, you know, the Marines, the instructors had these videos. I mean, this is pretty normal stuff, I'm sure, that anybody's seen. You know, their own personal videos of civilians and Hajis, and excuse that terminology, and excuse the other terminology, ragheads. I mean, I'm just going to use the Marine Corps terminology here, that they had killed or had videos of being killed, and they would play it, and we'd all cheer. And I mean, I think I was the only person at this point that was probably sick to my stomach, but we would all cheer and fuck yeah, we want to kill them. So this is just kind of the atmosphere of tension that, you know, of course, if we are cheering this, of course we're going to take it out on somebody. Somebody being the weakest link in the platoon, the slowest runner, the person that, you know, excuse my language, fucks the rest of the platoon over. Because in the Marine Corps, if one person makes a mistake, the whole platoon is punished, and punished severely. And in fact, that person might not even be punished. Envision Death of Full Metal Jacket. Like, that's real. The guy eating the donut while everybody else pays for it, that is the Marine Corps. So, you know, you can imagine that you are going to take your soap and beat the crap out of that person. You're going to line that person up and beat the crap out of them because you just paid for them. So I graduate, I go into military, my MOS school, my military occupational specialty, where I actually train, ironically, to be a videographer. While I'm there, I meet a young man, not the gentleman sitting next to me. We date. Everything seems fine. At this point, I don't even know how to begin going into the detailing what I experienced, because it's so vast. I mean, between the miscarriage, the suicide of my best friend, you know, the various heat strokes that I suffered, the rape, rape by my fiance, rape by people I worked with, the physical assault, the sexual harassment, the propositionings. You know, I don't even know how to begin seeing into how that all unfolded. I can tell you that the effects of it are that by the time I was a year in the Marine Corps, I began to see myself hanging from ceilings. And I knew where I would kill myself, but I never consciously thought, you know, I'm going to kill myself. I just had these weird visions of myself hanging like my friend had hung. My friend who, when he told the Marine Corps, "I want to kill myself, my mother is ill, please send me back home. My mother is terminally ill, I am bipolar, please discharge me, I am not fit to serve." They laughed at him, told him he was a liar, that his mother could take care of himself, sent him out. And the Lance Corporals, which is the E3, and the E2s, we set a shadow watch around him. A shadow watch is kind of a slang for a suicide watch. We set a shadow watch around him because our superiors clearly did not feel the need to. And during that shadow watch, he slipped away for 5 minutes, hung himself. And I'll never forget his body as we found it and it was rolled away. And we were so brainwashed at the time, we couldn't betray our superiors and write on the statement what had happened. We were so loyal, I was so loyal, to what the Marine Corps was and to our superiors that I couldn't understand. I did not believe that they could have done this to you, even though I knew it. I can't explain the kind of para-reality that I was living in, the kind of level. Sucker punch is the best way to explain it. Have many of you guys seen that? If you haven't seen it, watch it, because that's PTSD, where you live in layers of reality, because the reality that you're in is just so, like, you can't, there's something about it you can't deal with. And so I was living in this three-tiered reality where I knew the truth, and I couldn't deal with whatever that truth was. And then there was this other layer, and then this other layer, and then this, and by the time, like, my conscious mind was dealing with it, I just couldn't really, shame on me, I couldn't really access what I knew to be truth. And I can't explain how trauma does that to you, but I've since learned through going to counseling that, you know, you fragment, that you create alternate fictions for yourself. And in part, you know, when you're living in trauma, when you're living in this, you just kind of normalize it. This all becomes normal. Somebody, and this is part of the ethos of the Marine Corps. I'm not sure about the other services and how they deal with it, but the ethos of the Marine Corps is somebody's got it worse than you. So why are you complaining? And so when I started being raped by my fiance, which was a very slow decline. I want you to know it wasn't like just one night, you know, it was just like he just jumped on top of me and did it. It was a very slow decline. We both lost our best friends. I had, at this point, I was starting to become very ill. He was ill with facial surgery. He actually lost half of his face due to the negligence of recruiters who allowed him to go out and stand at full attention in the southern sun during the summer, and he got carcinoma, basal skin cancer. Marine Corps, of course, you're fine, you're fine. Eventually, you've got a whole chunk and nearly your eye taken out from cancer. So he had just lost half his face. And basically looks to this day like the Elephant Man. But, you know, so we were going through a lot. And then that on top of the just abuse in the schoolhouse. I say abuse because it is. It is abuse when you have girls basically having relationships with men because they're either afraid of getting harassed for sex by other men, if not assaulted. You have sergeants who preach, oh, you know, don't commit adultery, don't do this, don't do that, and then go out and sleep with the E2. And you have orgies by the same people who would probably write you up for, you know, dating your boyfriend or whatever. I mean, it just, I cannot unilaterally express the amount of hypocrisy that I witnessed at this school, the abuse that I saw, down to telling a person, you know, you're a liar, and then him hanging himself. I mean, down to people getting, you know, we would run 10 miles every day. I mean, what kind of, who does that, you know? to prove a point that we're Marines, we're better than the Air Force, we're better, you know, to prove a point, we'd run 10 miles. You know, young women running, you know, I hate to say it for the feminists out there, I used to be a feminist, but, you know, you just do that to a woman's body, she's going to break down. We had girls with hip fractures being told, you don't have a hip fracture, you're a malingerer, you're a liar, a malingerer, hypochondriac, you're a liar. I mean, I know people that have lost the cartilage in their whole left side. You know, and they're not even in the Fleet Marine Corps yet. The Fleet Marine Corps meaning they haven't even deployed. They haven't even done their job. They're still in school. So this is all going on at my school, and it's just the stress is just, you know, you don't even realize the stress is so much there. It's there, and you have no control of your life. So, I mean, we all turned to alcohol. Every one of us, some of us started taking Robitussin. When Spice came out on the market, Spice being this undetectable, wonderful drug, I mean, you're looking at a bunch of drugged out, spiced out, sex crazy people looking for another reality. My abuser, my ex-fiance, was, I would say, you know, normal guy. Normal as anybody else. I think he had his issues. I had mine. I have a horrible temper, so I'm no better than he is. You know, I've done my fair amount of abusing. But, so when I talk about him in this context, I want you to understand that this could have been any one of us, that this could have been you, that you could have been the one kicking that girl. You could have been the one raping if you were in this circumstance. So first, you know, it just began with emotional and verbal abuse. You're cheating, you know, that kind of thing. No, I'm not. You're insane. Degraded into pushing, pulling, controlling behavior. Just go look up domestic violence on Google. That's pretty much what you'll read in my experience. It's very slow. Eventually it just degraded into full-out rape. When I was first raped, I don't think I really realized it until I started waking up sore, bloody, from being drunk the night afterward, and then I started realizing what was going on. We had this perfect relationship. Everything in the Marine Corps is about appearance, down to your uniform. You IP it, you worship your uniform, you spend hours on it. You live for that praise. You've got a good uniform. So it's no surprise that our relationship was tailor perfect. So when I started realizing that this was going on, and I started going, I want to just get out of this relationship. This is not, I don't want to get married to this guy. I don't want to be here. I felt like it was my fault. Like I chose to be in the military. I chose this life. I chose this abuse. I chose this relationship. I chose to do this. So I didn't feel like I could step forward. And then, you know, other girls were raped too that I saw, like very blatantly. We were stationed at a joint base. We had the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, all those guys. And there was a girl that was, from my class actually, that was raped by a sailor, drug rape. She was left naked, discarded body on the front of her detachment. She was NJP'd within 3 days, non-judicially punished, because she was underage and had been drinking. That was what the Army was concerned about, that she was underage and had been drinking. We didn't see her. She just disappeared. So I saw other women that stepped forward and said, I'm being harassed, just kind of get blown over. I saw this girl. I saw another woman who experienced a miscarriage while she was there get ignored. So I just felt, well, you know, I chose this, you know. They're not going to listen to me. So I didn't say anything. Anyways, being raped, ended up in pregnancy. Unwanted pregnancy, but a pregnancy. I didn't realize this until about 3 months into it. My bridging on the gap of first and second trimester, I told my command I'm pregnant. I had problems with heat stroke due to MCT being kind of overrun, over-ragged. When I found out that I was pregnant, I experienced another heat exhaustion episode, that was how I found out. I dropped during a 3-mile run in 100-degree temperature with 70% humidity, as did 2 other people, just dropped like flies. Nobody else is running, just the Marines, but we dropped. So that's how I found out I was pregnant. In order to graduate, I had to do a 5-mile march with 40 pounds weight. Normally I'm sprinting these. I mean, I've got a 300 PFT. I mean, I'm making some of the men look like girls at this point, so I'm by no means, my history by no means shows me to be physically weak. And I can't even at this point walk from down the stairs without my heart palpitating. I can't do anything without feeling like I'm going to faint. But I'm told, if you're going to do this, if you're going to graduate, you got to do this. So my superiors don't say anything. They don't back me up. I go to them. They don't help me. I do the march. I, of course, can't make it. I get yelled at by the Army cadre. He tells me, I'm going to make sure that you fail this. He gives me a low score, whatever. That Saturday, I'm sitting down with my friend. I go to pee in the toilet, and I start miscarrying. I can't, for those of you who've been through pregnancy, I really admire you. I can't even imagine the pain. I started going through this incredible pain I've never experienced in my life. Blood everywhere. I can't really remember too much during the time that I miscarried and was taken to hospital. I was found in a pool of my blood up in the bathroom by one of the females on my floor that was doing duty. I was taken via the paramedic. When I got to the hospital, I was in a pool of blood. So much blood that they had to give me a transfusion. I mean, I was losing it that rapidly. I had a DNC performed, and that was my pregnancy. This all took place a few weeks after my friend had killed himself, of course. So it just kind of went bam, bam, bam. My hope was when I graduated, you know, I'm going to get away from my fiance. At this point, I just wanted to get away. At that point, I forgave him for raping me. I was just like, it just sounds strange, but I mean, that's just the level of reality I was in. I was just like, I understand that he's raping me. I mean, I was an outlet. I was an outlet. And I graduated, went to Paris Island, and somehow he got orders and got stationed 20 minutes away from me. So I was pretty disappointed. And we just continued the relationship as usual. And in part, you know, it was actually pretty good because when you're being waken up at 2 a.m. in the morning by the corporal across the room asking you in a drunken stupor if you want sex, it's kind of nice to have a guy with a scar on his face hanging around saying, fuck off. And that's the kind of the reality of many of the women that I worked with in the Marine Corps. You get married, you get a man as quick, if you are a remotely attractive female, you get a dude on that because you are not going to be left alone. You're going to be harassed day in and day out. And in some cases, you might even be physically assaulted. So the best thing you can do is find somebody who is going to make sure nobody else bugs you. And that's not the case for every single woman, but that's the case for the large majority of us. So, I mean, in a way, it ended up being a strange grace that he was there, because within 3 weeks, I was left alone. You know, I wasn't being propositioned for sex, which is kind of nice. Over time, eventually, I was able to break off the relationship, and this is the ironic tipping point for me. We were drinking. I was actually sober. My friends were drinking, he was drinking, and one of the young men attempted to flirt with me. My boyfriend, of course, went irate, very jealous person. Grabbed me by the neck. and began to strangle me. In the Marine Corps, we have combatives, and the way that you strangle somebody without leaving a mark is you yoke them up, and you just tap out the blood arteries. It's better than a wind choke. I'm sure some of you might know that. You press on the blood arteries, within 3 seconds, somebody's going to be out unconscious. And that's how he had been carrying out the rape without leaving any marks. You just put that pressure very gently, and your victim is pretty much rendered helpless. So he began to do this in front of everybody. And that was just the breaking point for me, because at that point I kind of accepted it. Like, this is just kind of going to go on and on and on. But as long as nobody else is fucking with me, I can accept this. You know, I signed up for this. This is my fault. Which is stupid, but... he did this in front of everybody. And then the next day I was just like... I told him to leave, and that was the end of that. Until he started stalking me, but that's a whole other story. From that demonstration, things in the Marine Corps are pretty small. I lived on a base with less than 600 permanent personnel. We were the recruit training. That's where all the recruits go and train. So a very small base. Everybody knows everybody. Word gets around. And I think word got around about that because other young men started picking up on that cue. I'd worked very hard to maintain the fact that I was equal. I could do the pull-ups, I could do the sit-ups, I could do the runs, you know, I could do the work. I'm not one of those females that's here to, you know, get pregnant and sit 2 years out of, you know, her time and collect the money. I'm here to go to war with you guys. You know, I'm here to be an equal, which is a fight every female in the Marine Corps has to make, and usually loses. So, you know, I started getting slapped on the thighs by my coworkers. I even got blood choked by one of my coworkers. I mean, in the exact same fashion that I'd been blood choked. During this time, I started becoming a rampant alcoholic, which is not unusual. That's kind of the symptom of being a Marine. And I started taking 1 NyQuil shot, 2 NyQuils, 2 shots, get to bed. I couldn't sleep. I was so just... I don't know, wound. And during that time, a young man that I trusted, I thought was my friend, came in and raped me. I woke up and found him raping me. And I told one of my superiors about it, and they confronted him, and that was that. But pretty much what happens when a person is raped in the Marine Corps, assaulted, is you're given 52 questions, and they cover anything from were you drinking to are you of age to drink to where were you when you're drinking, who were you drinking with, down to, you know, if the person married, are you married, is he your commander, are you his, you know, are you his superior? I mean, pretty much by the time you get down the 52 questions in order to get your rape kit and your whatever help the Marine Corps Uniform Victims Advocate gives you, it's pretty much you've become the, you are no longer a victim, you are the perpetrator. So nobody wants to go through this. You know, I mean, I've met women who have been raped by their Marine Corps husbands. I've met Marine females who have been harassed, and nobody wants to go down this line because it's just your dirty laundry. And it's really comes down to, in the Marine Corps, you're either a slut or a bitch. And it's kind of the stigma that if you come forward and say, I'm being harassed, assaulted, raped, whatever, well, let's look at your history. Who have you dated? Who have you? Are you a slut? What do people have to say about you? I'll give you an example of this. Actually, while this was going on, another young woman came forward and said she had been raped by her boyfriend, and they carried out a pretty public trial of it. And she was found to be a liar. He was acquitted, and she was moved. So, I mean, that's kind of the stuff. I mean, we're talking dragged out, like everybody, detail of your personal life getting just flung out in the air. And then to have that all be told, basically you're a liar. You're making this up in a court of law. So, I mean, you know, this is the situation that I'm in. I don't applaud myself let me put it this way. I've been told by gunnery sergeants after my discharge that I should have come forward
Why didn't you never went through the correct chains? You never went through the correct venues. And my response to that was, is it useful? I mean, you tell me. So this goes on, and I start dropping hints, you know, that things aren't per normal. I go through several more sexual assaults that did not culminate in rape, but could have if a young man hadn't walked in and seen another Marine holding me down to the bed and said, hey man, let's just go get a drink, let's blow it off, you know. That same savior came to my room later that night and asked me, well, how about it? Let's have sex. So I mean, you know, at this point, I can't even walk down on a Friday night. I'm afraid to walk down from point A to point B because I don't want to know who's going to come out of the woodwork that I thought I could trust and who's going to ask me. Well, I mean, I even had wives of Marines asking me to sleep with them, asking me to sleep with them and their husbands that were, you know, wives of my corporals. I mean, just every level of trust that could be there was just kind of like, you know, am I really that much of an object to you? I mean, just, but I mean, that's the Marine Corps I know. I think the experience that I had really reflects the largesse of what's going on in society today. I think the Marine Corps is just kind of this very pressurized version of what's going on. I look at the pornography, the violent movies in our culture, the promiscuity of the posters and advertisements that we watch, the stupid philosophies of you can have your cake and eat it too, broadcasted by not only feminists but conservatives. And I think this is all contribute to this idea that you can put a woman in a barracks of 100 dudes and at work with 30 guys and think she's going to be okay. It's not going to happen. So I feel like the Marine Corps, as well as society, is living in this idealistic utopia that you can do this to women and say you're going to be treated equally. I don't even think all the sexual, you know, the rape PMEs, periods of instructions, the anti-rape, the anti-sexual harassment, the anti-suicide. I mean, I made videos about going against suicide. The Marine Corps is very on top of this. Marine Corps proper is very anti-suicide. I mean, I made videos about, you know, preaching against suicide, preaching against rape. I've sat in on the lectures. I've, you know, seen it all. And it doesn't help. If you have a society that believes that women can go into that environment and be okay, you have a society that's buying some serious bull. And so I feel like, in retrospect, you know, I can blame the Marine Corps, but I really look at the civilian populace and think, what are you trying to make the military do with your egalitarian crap? Because it's not going to happen. You're not going to put women and men together in that environment and have somebody come out okay. You're going to have a woman come out with PTSD, a woman like myself who's had to face the struggle of surviving every day and go, is my life really worth it? The shame, the marriage wrecking, because it's hurt my marriage. It's, I can't even really get a job because I'm afraid. I mean, I've got chronic illnesses that I don't care to mention because of this. But our society and our military is bent on this illusion that's kind of threaded through our culture. But within that, you have a culture that's very violent, a Marine Corps that's very violent, that our society doesn't want to look at. That even I have found that even in a certain sense, our anti-war community doesn't look at and want to look at we want to look at the violence and deride it, but we're really unwilling to look at the violence within ourselves and realize that these people, you know, were impoverished college students like myself, young people that were in poor communities ethnically disadvantaged, socially disadvantaged, racially just disadvantaged all around. People from broken homes. I mean, interesting statistic here, 70% at the time that I was in, 70% of the women that joined were abused, had been abused, physically abused in some way. So you've got a culture of abused women going into an abusive environment. Is that a coincidence, or is that a pattern of abuse? You tell me. But so really, you know, this behavior is not unusual, and I think any of us would do the same. In that circumstance, you know, we can look at the military and blame it, but really I think it's the kind of that heart of darkness that we all have, that the military just has brought out. PTSD is interesting in the sense that I can say all this to you and I can go home and beat my dog, and I have. So I can come up here and be a Quaker pacifist that went AWOL because of what I believed. But at the end of the day, what I've seen and what I've been through makes me a person apart from the rest of you in a way. A person violent, dysfunctional, angry. A person like my ex-fiance who raped me. A person like myself who's afraid to be around children because of what I might do to them. Afraid to be with animals and pets, even though I once loved animals and pets, because I might do to them. And we can blame the war, but it's really the military culture, the lie that we want the military culture to be this perfect place. And what I fear with the anti-war campaign, even though I support it so dearly, is that we're going to pressure Washington to write policies that will only make them have more periods of instructions about suicide and write harder enforcements and laws and add 55 questions instead of 52, because that's what they're going to do. The way that they're going to operate is, we don't want the shit on our back. And that's the way the military operates. So I feel like in all of your politicking and activism, take away this, that if you're not reaching out to the individual, the bureaucracy will, and not reach out, but affect them by writing policies that don't help, but rather hinder. So the real burden is on each of us as individuals to make sure that our neighbors don't have impoverished people, as far as we can help them individually. Writing policy doesn't help. Changing things in Washington doesn't help. The Marine Corps is going to be the Marine Corps. The abusiveness is going to be the abusiveness. You throw a woman with 100 guys, something's going to happen. These bare facts won't matter, but the part that I feel like we can do is make an individual change on an interpersonal level. So yes, go away and be part of these organizations and be part of these groups, but remember that at the end of the day, unless you have got that personal relationship, we're not going to do anything. This is going to just keep on happening behind the closed doors. One of the most effective, and I say this with sarcasm, anti-rape, assault, command-directed stand-downs that lasted for a day was where they took us all, 600 plus of us, and played a real tape of a woman being raped on a 911 call. Me and several other young women, of course, spent the rest of the day indisposed. So to echo
John Carp.
Mr. Carp here, that's kind of the nature of those kinds of briefs.
What I experienced was cultural. It was part of a cultural military, and I want to emphasize that. It might have been exacerbated by a generation of Marines, you know, a generation that has been a part of war for so long, but that's the cultural undertone. And I really do hold it that it's not just the military. This is part of the culture as a whole. The military just reflects y'all. It just reflects you and I before I joined, after I joined.
So really, we need to look at our culture, you know, whether it's our community, our nation, us, and go, why is it that our military reflects this? You look at other militaries around the world, not all of them are like that. So why is it our military is showing this? I worked at a non-deployable base. I've never been overseas, but I have experienced stuff that I was diagnosed with severe PTSD. I've never even stepped onto sand. I've never stepped on the wire. So there's something culturally wrong that our military is reflecting. Because if you as a wife and you as a mother and you have kids, you're going to go to Washington in mass throngs and be like, get my child the fuck out of there. But instead, it's my mom. My mom who's like, well, just file a sexual harassment claim, honey. She doesn't get it because I volunteered. We get applauded. We get 10% discounts. We get thanked. But nobody wants to hear it.
Exactly.
And we get recruited out of impoverished homes. And I'm not a socialist by any means. I don't think that changing poverty is going to help this. But I'd like to point out that the demographic of people that are going into this is very striking. And so it's not fair that, you know, you bring up Clausewitz, and I mean, that's just a really brilliant point about the politics. It's not a fair representation of our democracy. And the scary thing is, and Ben's written about this and actually got in trouble with it with his command, was, you know, there are generals up there who are trying to make the military privatized force. They're trying to get soldiers to swear not to the military or to the American people or the Constitution, but to the military itself.